So move would be applicable here. We are going to take out this loop from this needle. Now let's look at the way we can add more colors to knitted fabrics to make more design combinations. It is also possible to mix colors with the structure designs to create more complex designs. By the end of this unit, students will be able to describe ways of creating multiple colored knitted fabrics. The first module focuses on creating stripes. The simplest way to mix color into a knitted fabric is by creating multicolored stripes. You may also have noticed most of the stripe designs you see are horizontal in nature. Let us look at the way to create stripes in flat knitting machine. After knitting a few courses with one color, change the yarn feeder with a different one which is having a different colored yarn in it. This time a new color would be knitted above the previous color. This way you can create horizontal stripes in knitted fabrics. A normal hand driven flat knitting machine will be equipped with two feeders. If more colors are required, you may have to manually change the yarn of one of the feeder. This way you can manage any number of colors in your knitted pattern. In case of advanced knitting machine, there are more number of feeders available. Some of them are equipped with 40 feeders to produce complex stripe patterns. It is also interesting to know that vertical stripes are not possible in weft knitting machines using the standard stripe method. If we need to create a vertical stripe, we can use Jacquard, Intarsia or plating technique. You have seen the possibilities in knitting, the structures using a single color. How are we going to introduce more colors into knitting? The simplest method to introduce color is through the method of a stripe. So if you have a fabric, you can easily have different colored stripes in it. Now you must have noticed most of the knitted garments will have horizontal stripe. That's because most of the knitted garments are knitted with weft knitting technology, and in weft knitting, knitting happens in this direction. So how are we going to produce different stripes? You have seen the needles and the different parts in machine, and the needles goes up and catch the thread, catch the yarn. Now who is providing that yarn? There is a component, there is a part of that machine called feeder. So the feeder will give a particular color and the needle will go and catch the thread. So to get a stripe like this, we will start knitting with one color which is attached in a feeder. We will change the feeder with a different color in it and we will start knitting. So you can change different courses and you can use different feeders for different courses, and in that way we can change the color of different courses. So here if there are about 10 courses, we have knitted with black color. Here let's say there are 4 courses knitted with red color. When we keep doing this in a repeated manner, we will start getting stripes. This is the easiest way to put colors into any of the knitted fabric. Now you can see the same thing in machine. The first module focuses on creating 4 types of jacquards. To create more complex colored pattern, we can use a technique called Jacquard. In this unit, we will discuss 4 different Jacquard techniques: float Jacquard, tubular Jacquard, bird's eye Jacquard, and ladder back Jacquard. A Jacquard is a technique by which you can bring out a particular color by selecting few needles to the front side of the fabric and simultaneously hide few other colors. This method, along with individual needle selection, make Jacquard one of the most popular method to create colored patterns in knitting. We have seen how stripes can be used. That is the simplest way of adding colors into the knitted fabric. Now stripes have to start from one end, run throughout. It cannot produce any motif. What if we need to create a nice motif in this fabric? For example, let's create a small patch of color in the middle of a black fabric. We have a patch of red in the middle. With stripe technique, we cannot produce it, because if at all we use stripe technique, the red color have to start from here, go all the way to the end and create a broad stripe here. But what we need is, these areas we want black only, top and bottom as well we need black. We want the red color to appear only in the center. Now what are the different techniques we can apply? We clearly know we need 2 different colored yarn to produce this. Now when we start knitting, we are going to start from here and end here. So that means the red is available here also, but it is hidden. Black is available here, but it is hidden. Red is available here, it is hidden. So if I show a technique, the black is in the front side, then back side, then again in the front, the red in the back side, in the front side, then here again. So if you look at the center area of this swatch, we have black in the front, then red in the front, again black in the front. So this way we can hide certain colors which is not required to be shown in the front side of the fabric. If we use this technique, then we can say we are using a Jacquard technique to produce the fabric design. I'll show you what are the different type of Jacquard technique. The simplest one would be a tubular Jacquard or a reversible Jacquard. Now when we create a Jacquard with this, we have 2 needle beds, front bed and back bed. And we also know the front knitting would be shown like this, the back knitting would be shown like this, and front and back knitting would be shown like this. So when we start knitting starting from here up to this point where the Jacquard is just starting, we will have only one color which is black, that would be in knitting action. Up to this point we will have only black knitting happening. At this point here we will select few needles from the front bed, and we will select few needles from the back bed, again few needles from the front bed, and we will knit these this way. So we have a gap here. The front needle bed in this area are not knitting. We will knit this much and hold the feeder on the right hand side. You will come back, we will take the red color feeder and we will select the needles which missed out in the previous course. So that means we are going to select needles from this area and then knit it. Sorry, it's a back knitting, so we need to show like this, then front knitting and again back knitting. So if you look at this particular set of courses, you can clearly see there is a front knit happening with black, then there is a front knit happening with red, again front knit happening with black. If you look at the back side of it, there is a red color knitting happening at the back, then black color knitting, again red color knitting. So you can see the design is getting reversed in the back side. That is the reason we call this as a reversible jacquard. Now when we do this, we are creating a hollow area in this one area here as well as here and here. That means there will be pockets formed at this point, here and here. That's the reason we call it as a tubular jacquard. It's creating a tubular space between this here and here. So this is one way of creating jacquard. Now you can clearly see we can use two colors easily, and we have to use both front bed and back bed to create this particular jacquard. Now let's imagine our yarn is expensive and or we want a thinner fabric, either way. So we want to reduce the yarn usage and also we want to reduce the weight of the fabric and the thickness of the fabric. In that case, we need to go for single jersey jacquard. Now this is a double jersey jacquard. Now to produce single jersey jacquard with the same design, what we need to do is, in this area it is exactly the same. We need to knit with black color up to this. After that, we are going to select few needles from the front. We will not select any needles here. We will select few more needles from this area. That means we are selecting this needles from here, this needles from here. And we will be using our black feeder to knit this area. It will knit this much, knit, then a miss, then again knit. Now after that, we will take the red color feeder. We will select the missed out needles. We'll create a miss, long miss here, and then knit here, and again create a long miss. Now from the front side, it looks very much like what we want. We have black, then red, again black. Back side, you will have long floats of yarn because of the long miss we had. So there will be red yarn floating, black yarn floating, again red yarn floating here. Now this is the thinnest or lightweight jacquard possible. Now there is also a problem with this. The problem is you cannot have designs which repeats in a wider area. The reason why we cannot have designs with a repeat of wider area is because we cannot have longer floats hanging in the back side of the fabric. So if you have longer floats hanging at the back side of the fabric, when you wash it or when you wear it or when you handle it, there is a possibility such kind of floats will get entangled with some of the objects and break this yarn. If you break the yarn in between, there is a possibility of that loops coming out. That means that fabric cannot be used further. So as a safety precaution, safety measure, we will have maximum loop length, maximum float length as 3/4 of an inch only. So 3/4 of an inch, almost this much size, that is the kind of float we can have. That also means we cannot have this kind of design because this in actual would be more than 2 inches. That means black is going to float for 2 inches. Here we are going to have again more than 2 inches. Red is going to float here close to 3 inches. Red is going to float. We cannot have such kind of designs if we are trying to do single jersey jacquard. For single jersey jacquard, we need to have a design which is repeated very closely. That means no floats would exceed the limit of 3/4 of an inch. So only selected kind of design can be knitted with this technique. Whereas in tubular jacquard, the one we saw just before this, we can have any kind of design with whatever gap you want. Let's say if you want this much gap in between two patterns, that is also possible, because in tubular jacquard we are not having a float. Instead we are going to have a back knit happens there. So these are the two different kind of jacquards. One is a single jersey jacquard, which is a lightweight jacquard. But the disadvantages of lightweight jacquard or single jersey jacquard would be you cannot have any kind of design. You need to have only smaller design which is repeated very closely. The second, the double jersey jacquard, you can have any kind of design but limited number of colors, plus it is going to increase the weight of the fabric further. Now let's say we need more colors. So tubular jacquard, we saw 2 colors are possible. We want more colors in it. So let's say we want a design we have seen tubular jacquard or reversible jacquard with 2 colors, as well as a single jersey jacquard. Now let's say if we need more colors in it, and these are bigger repeat areas. So we cannot have tubular jacquard, we also cannot have single jersey jacquard or the float jacquard. So we need to go for a different kind of jacquard. Now in this jacquard, let's say we have 1, 2 and there is a black color in it. So we have 3 colors and we want to start knitting here. So what happens here is, in 3 colors we are starting with red. So we'll knit red in this area and we are going to have a float. Now in the second one we will have a float and knit, then again float. In the third one, which is with black color, we will have a long float here, then black knit. This will not be stable. So what we need to do is, to break this long float, we need to knit in some area at the back side. So few random knits will happen on the back side with all these different colors, so that no long floats, continuous floats being created. So when we do the random knitting at back, certainly it is going to create certain pattern, and that pattern will look like in a fabric with lot of dots with varied colors, because the example I have shown was only with 3 colors. If you have more colors, all this will have different needles knitting on it and breaking that long floats, and backside will have nice pattern like this, which is called as bird's eye jacquard. So it really represents the bird's eye view of earth from a very high distance. So nothing would be clear, everything for us, our houses or buildings, cars, everything will look like small dots. So that is how it has been represented. The advantages of bird's eye jacquard is, we can have whatever number of colors we want, we can have whatever kind of designs we want, we still will be able to knit it. But then disadvantage is one of the heaviest jacquard. Now let's say we want this same design but at the same time we don't want very heavy jacquard, because whatever reason we decide like we cannot have a heavy fabric. How are we going to create this? Now what we are going to do is, we'll still have almost very similar technique, but we will not knit all the needles with different colors. We will be knitting in certain needles in the back bed, the rest would be floats only of different colors. So that means the front remains the same. When we knit at the back, we will not knit randomly on all needles, we will be knitting only on selected needles in regular intervals. So no floats would be longer than those two regular intervals. Let's say we have selected needle here, here, here. So all the loops will end here, again we will have loops here. So that means like here you will have a series of loops in this areas with different colors, and here you will have floats in between at the back. So this is a combination of back knit plus float jacquard, and this is known as, because of the shape here, it's known as ladder back jacquard, because back side looks like ladders. Now this is the one of the most popular jacquard type in industry, because this have the ability to knit multiple colors, whatever kind of design, yet lightweight. Not as lightweight as single jersey jacquard, but it will not be as heavy as bird's eye jacquard either. Let us first look at creating a fabric with a base color and a block of second color in the center as shown in the diagram. As you know, we always start the knitting from bottom to the top. The first few colors we can knit with a single feeder till we reach the bottom of the colored block. Next course, first select the needles where you need to show the base color and knit only those needles with that color. Now select the needles to create the color block and knit those needles with the second feeder, which is having the color you wanted to appear in the color block. Repeat the step till you reach the end of the block and then knit with the base color alone. When you look at the fabric from the front side, observe that this looks similar to the drawing. But if you look at the back side of the fabric, observe that whenever you have not knitted a yarn in the certain area, there is a long float. Hence the name float jacquard. Since we have used only one bed for knitting, this technique is also known as single jersey jacquard. The only drawback of this method is you cannot have long floats, as during washing, the floating yarn may break and unravel the fabric. So the maximum length of a float has to be restricted to less than 1 inch. Now this will restrict the pattern as well. So we need to repeat the same color after 1 inch of the width. Hence only smaller, dense patterns are knitted with this method. For example, Fur Isles pattern. Advantages of float jacquard. Since we are not knitting on backbed needles, the weight of the knitted fabric will be relatively low compared to the double jersey jacquard. Disadvantages of float jacquard. Since we cannot have very long floats, we cannot make bigger motifs or low density patterns. Let us look at creating the same pattern of colored block with double jersey method. To create this jacquard, let's start the way we did for float jacquard. First, knit with the base color until we reach the color block. Start with the base color and select needles from the front bed where you need the base color. Also select the back bed needles for the entire width of the colored block and knit with the base color yarn. Next, select the rest of the needles from both the beds and knit with second color. Repeat till the top of the block. Continue with the base color knit to complete the swatch. Let us look at the fabric now. Observe that the front side looks exactly as the float jacquard as the same design is used here. Now look at the back side of the fabric. The design remains same but the colors have reversed. Hence the name reversible jacquard. This is also known as tubular jacquard as each color knitted separately on front bed and back bed results in tubular space between them. This can be felt by pulling the fabric from front and back in opposite direction in any color blocked area. Advantages of tubular jacquard. The knit will be as fine as single jersey and looks cleaner than other double jersey jacquard from the front side. It also a reversible jacquard. Any design can be created using this method with two colors. Disadvantages of tubular jacquard. Only two colors can be used in this method. This creates heavier fabrics compared to float jacquard of the same design. If you use a bird's eye jacquard, you can have multiple colors and virtually any pattern. In this type of jacquard, the yarn which is not knitting on the front bed needle will knit on back bed needles with certain intervals to avoid long float. Since all needles at the back side will have some color yarn knitted on it, the floats would be concealed between the front and back knit. As multiple yarns with different colors would be knitting on adjacent needles on the bed, there will be a multicolored dotted pattern which might look similar to bird's eye view of earth from the sky. Hence the name bird's eye jacquard. Advantages of bird's eye jacquard. It can knit with more number of colors. Any pattern is possible with such a method. Disadvantages of bird's eye jacquard. One of the heaviest jacquard type. Front loops would be slightly stretched if you use more colors. Ladder back jacquard is the most popular method to create a multicolor design as it is lightweight in construction. In this type, there will be a float which is restricted to the acceptable width and there will be a veil of back knit to arrest the float. This is to break a longer float into smaller one with acceptable width. This will appear as a ladder at the back as the floats are getting arrested with two veils on either side. This leaves less number of back knits and make the fabric lighter than bird's eye jacquard technique. Advantages. It can knit with more number of colors. Any pattern is possible with this method. It is lightweight compared to bird's eye jacquard. Disadvantages. It is heavier than float jacquard. This module focuses on Intarsia. The biggest disadvantages of any type of jacquard is slow production, added weight and wastage of yarn. Slow production because at a time a machine can knit only 1 to 4 colors depending on the number of knitting systems in the machine. That means for every additional set of colors, the carriage should make an empty carriage move without feeders to the opposite direction to pick up the rest of the feeders to complete an effective course. Let us look at this example. We are going to knit a jacquard pattern with 3 colors using a single system knitting machine. To complete the first jacquard course, the machine has to start, let's say, from left side and move to right side with first color. The carriage should then make an empty move towards the left side to pick up the second color and repeat the same for the third color as well. So that means we have 5 different movements of the carriage to complete a single effective course. The production will come down to 1/5 compared to a solid color knitting. It is going to be heavy as well as there will be wastage of expensive yarn because whenever we are not knitting a particular color owing to the pattern design, the yarn is floating or knitting on the back side of the fabric. Intarsia is a technique by which you can produce almost all jacquard patterns with a fabric thickness of a single jersey. The appearance of this fabric would be as if someone has cut out the base fabric and patched it with a colored fabric to complete the design. To do Intarsia, we need to have more number of feeders for the same color depending on that number of color blocks in each course. For example, let's look at the first design we tried on jacquard, a colored block in the middle of a base fabric. If you look at the single course in the middle of the fabric, you can see 3 blocks of loops with 2 colors. So basically we have 2 colored blocks with the base color and 1 color block with the second color. In this case, unlike jacquard where you just need to have 2 feeders with 2 colors, here you need to have 3 feeders, 2 with base color and 1 with the second color. Let's try to knit this pattern with 3 feeders in 2 colors. At the beginning of the Intarsia area knitting, the machine will park all the 3 feeders just before the start of each colored block. The carriage will start from the left side, knit the last block and move the feeder to the right side. Now the carriage makes an empty move to the opposite side to knit with the second feeder with the second color which is parked in the middle of the knitting area. This would be knitted to the length of the block and parked just outside the middle block. Now the carriage goes back to the left side to fetch the third feeder and knit the first block. Then the entire process is done in the reverse direction. If there are more number of knitting systems, the carriage can take more yarn feeders simultaneously and reduce the number of movements required for the knitting on a single movement. Alternatively, if there are feeders available with kickback system, it will allow the feeders to kick sideways and will go up, clearing the knitting needle to perform without any worry of clashing with the feeder. In such a scenario, all the 3 blocks can be knitted simultaneously. We have seen different jacquard techniques. Now, one of the major disadvantage with jacquard technique is it creates unwanted volume, extra weight. We cannot really create a very thin fabric with multicolors involved in it using jacquard technique. What if we want to achieve different colors, patterns without compromising the weight or the thickness of the fabric? We want to retain it as thin as possible, as thin as single jersey. Now that is not possible with the jacquard technique. So let's look at the same design which we tried with jacquard. There's a piece of cloth with a small triangle, a small rectangle inside. Now usually in jacquard technique, the red color would be hiding behind the blue. Whether it is a float or a net, it will be there. And the same way, the blue color would be hiding behind the red. Again, through float or net, whatever way, it is going to be there. What we need in reality is only the front side of it. The back side, as far as we are concerned, is a waste. Now, can we remove that waste completely and retain only this particular part? Yes, it is possible using a completely different technique. That technique is known as Intarsia. In Intarsia, you will have one feeder stationed at this area with a blue color in it, a second feeder stationed at this point with red color in it, a third feeder stationed here with blue color again. So the blue feeder, first feeder, will knit on this part. The red feeder will take over and knit this part, and the third feeder with blue color will knit the third part. So there is no float, no back netting, nothing happening at the back. We have only the front design, whatever is required for us. So this way we can reduce the wastage, we can make very thin fabric with whatever designs required. Now the major difference here is, in Jacquard technique we had one blue feeder which was running from this point to the last point. In Intarsia technique, this area we are treating as one color block of blue, this being treated as a second color block of blue again. So instead of counting the number of colors used in this fabric, we have to count the number of color blocks available. Accordingly, that many feeders have to be assigned. This is one of the major difference between Intarsia and Jacquard. So I will show you another example. Let us say there is another fabric with a design like this. If you want to knit this in Intarsia, in Jacquard, we just need two colors, two feeders. One will be knitting from here to here in blue color, another would be with red color, would be knitting from this to this. Now the same time, if we are using Intarsia method to produce this, we will be having one feeder exclusively for this zone, blue color, a second blue color feeder, third blue color feeder, fourth blue color feeder, fifth blue color feeder, sixth blue color feeder. There are 6 feeders with blue colors attached into it that would be working here. Now red, first feeder with red, second feeder with red, third feeder with red, fourth feeder with red, fifth feeder with red. So in Jacquard, this design, blue will have one feeder, red will have one feeder. In Intarsia technique, we will have 6 blue feeders and 5 red feeders. Now this is the major difference in terms of the equipments related, but after knitting you will have a fabric as thin as single jersey, no extra back knitting, no waist knitting, no excess weight, a clean fabric with multiple colored blocks. That's the difference. Now this one is an expensive method. Jacquard Intarsia is an expensive method. Either we can use hand driven machines, but it takes lot of time. Now if I make a comparison, on let's say 8-hour shift, an operator run the machine for 8 hours and produce around 20 panels on an average. With such kind of Intarsia technique in it, he might produce just one panel. That means the knitting cost has gone 20 times compared to a normal knitting. Another way is like using computerized knitting machine for such kind of fabric. Again, knitting cost per minute goes up because the investment for computerized knitting machine is far higher. So either way, Intarsia is a much more expensive techniques to try, but then it depends on whether we want to save the yarn or we want to save the knitting cost. So that is one of the criteria we apply to decide whether the design to be knitted in Intarsia or in Jacquard. There could be many other reasons. It could be related to the brand, it could be related to the brand value or the image of that brand. If it is a premium brand, they will try to do Intarsia, not Jacquard. It could also because the design required Intarsia, not really Jacquard. Multiple reasons, but if it is purely based on commercial aspect, then it will boil down to just one thing: the cost of the yarn used. Let's say if we use acrylic yarn, which is the cheapest yarn, around 250 rupees a kg in India, we would be wasting, let's say, 30% while doing the Jacquard here. So, if we knit around 100 grams, almost 70 grams would be the front side, 30% has gone, 30 grams have gone to the back side as wastage. So, that 30%, whatever is the cost of that, more than that would be saved if you knit the same fabric using Jacquard technique. Let us say a different fabric, different yarn has been used, like cashmere wool. Cashmere wool is very expensive, one of the most expensive fabric used for knitting. It will cost close to 20,000 rupees a kg. So 30% wastage would mean like thousands of rupees. Now, if we are using cashmere, we will never try to do a Jacquard design because there are a lot of wastage, there are a lot of yarn floating behind, creating excess fabric, and all that can be saved if you use Intarsia design. But with Intarsia design, your knitting cost will go high. But when we compare the cost we are saving through yarn and the cost we are spending through knitting, based on that comparison, we can take a decision whether we should go for Intarsia technique or a Jacquard technique. Advantages: it is the most lightweight construction technique for colored pattern. There is no wastage of yarn like in Jacquard. It is as fast as solid color knitting if you use kickback feeders. Disadvantages: the number of feeders decide the number of color blocks you can have it in your pattern. Only less complex pattern can be knitted, more costly to knit. If we use hand driven machines, the operator might take one full day to complete one panel. If we use a computerized knitting machine, which can ensure faster production, but this is expensive as the investment in a computerized system is more. Intarsia Jacquard is a combination of both the technology which combines the benefit of the two. The Jacquard is capable of producing multiple colored block with minimum number of feeders, and Intarsia makes the fabric thin as single jersey. Let us say we need to create a football motif with black and white color in the center of a green colored knitted panel. The Intarsia technique alone cannot be used as it might require more number of feeders than you have in your machine. A Jacquard pattern will make the fabric heavier as it will knit all the green colored area also with black and white yarn. However, if we use a Intarsia Jacquard combination, then the Jacquard would be limited only to the black and white colored football motif area, and we will be able to knit the rest of the panel with green color as in Intarsia. This helps us to reduce the total number of feeders to 4, 2 with green color and 1 each with for black and white colors. This module focuses on plating. As the name suggests, plating is a technique which will cover a loop with another one with a different color. For this technique, we need 2 different colored yarn with a similar cross section for an effective plating. The technique is simple. Feed each needle with 2 different colored yarn and make sure 2 different yarns are available in 2 different heights. This will ensure when the needle comes down, one loop would always be on top side of the hook and the other always just below that. Both the loops will slip over the hook when the next cycle of loop formation happens, and the released top loop would be covered by the bottom loop. This ensures single jersey fabric to look like one color from one side and another color from the other side. As suggested, full needle double jersey fabric will not have the plaited effect as the top loops from either side will be hidden between the two front stitch. If you use transfer patterns or rib structures like 2 by 2 or 3 by 3 etc., two colored pattern with the front and back net will appear on both sides of the fabric. New fabric structure development is relatively easy by imaginatively combining different techniques. I would like to share some of the creative fabric developments our students have done on hand flat machines and computerized knitting machine. You have come to the end of this unit. To summarize, in this unit, you have learned to create multiple colored knitted fabrics such as stripes, jacquard, intarsia and plaited fabric. Thank you.